Pyramid Head is by far Silent Hill's most iconic monster. As evidenced by his appearances across the franchise and in various other forms of media, there's just something about him that resonates with players. 3 decades later, the remake of Silent Hill 2 has brought him back to center stage, as a whole new generation of gamers are now trapped in the fog with the great knife-wielding horror. But Pyramid Head is so much more than just a monster, so much more than just an antagonist, so much more than just a recurring boss. He's a symbol for James's desire for punishment, the force that tests his mettle and pushes him towards the truth. And it is the stunning depth of his portrayal and the way he brilliantly delivers his many narrative roles that, in my view, has made him the enduring icon of the survival horror genre. So as we enjoy our glorious return to the resort town by the lake, let's take a few minutes to understand Pyramid Head on a deeper level. James sees Pyramid Head for the first time here, beyond this grate in Woodside Apartments. It's a bit of a weird and, honestly, underwhelming introduction to such an iconic character. Notably, Pyramid Head's creator, Masahiro Ito, disagreed with the team's decision to place him here. And I have to admit, I'm with Ito on this one. To borrow the words of one of the 21st century's greatest scholars,
"He's just standing there, menacingly!"
Which is certainly a strange way to reveal your game's de facto antagonist. Pyramid Head's proper introduction takes place in room 201. Here, James witnesses Pyramid Head sexually assault a mannequin. Before we continue, it's important to, once again, bring up the viewpoint of Masahiro Ito here. He doesn't agree with the interpretation that Pyramid Head is sexually assaulting this mannequin. He believes that Pyramid Head is simply attacking and killing them. He doesn't dismiss the interpretation entirely, but it's not how he personally views this scene. I've seen some folks take his word as the final authority on the matter, but unlike with our triangular adversary's introduction, I have to side with the more traditional viewpoint on this one. It's hard for me to see this scene any other way, and I'd argue that the vast majority of folks watching it are going to come away thinking the same thing, that Pyramid Head is sexually assaulting this mannequin. Furthermore, Ito's statements are at odds with other members of the team, including Takayoshi Sato, the game's character designer and CGI director, who said the following.
Psychological horror has to shake human's heart, deeply. Shaking people's heart deeply means uncover people's core emotion and their core motivation for life. Everybody is thinking and concerning about, sex and death every day. And if we want to scare or shake or touch the users or spectators, then we have to think about, sex and death deeply.
Major credit to the Silent Hill Wiki, who brings up this point in their own article on Pyramid Head, and YouTuber Fungo, who posted this documentary in its entirety on their YouTube channel a while back. So Ito's intention might not have been to depict a sexual assault in this scene, but that is likely what other members of Team Silent were going for. That having been said, I do think, given this disagreement, that it's interesting that the remake frames what happens here in a more ambiguous nature. The implication is still there, but it's not as clear as it was in the original. I've seen some folks accuse Bloober Team of doing this to censor the scene, but considering that Ito was involved in the remake, I wouldn't be shocked if the real reason was to honor his personal interpretation of what's going on here. But beyond Sato's statement about the link between psychological horror and sex, the question is, why? Why would they have Pyramid Head do this? And why would they put James in the closet as a witness to this vile act? It all ties back to Pyramid Head's role in the narrative. As you'll see time and time again as we look at Pyramid Head's actions, his purpose is to force James to face the truth, to force him to accept that he killed Mary, and that he had selfish reasons for doing so that go beyond the fact that in some of the game's endings, like the Leave ending, it does appear that she did want to die. No matter how you interpret this scene, Pyramid Head is fulfilling that goal here. If he's just killing the mannequin, as Ito prefers, then he's helping to clear the way for James, something we see him do at several points in the game, like in Blue Creek Apartments, where you can find a ton of dead monsters that were clearly killed by him. If it is a sexual assault, then it's an allusion to those selfish reasons that James wanted Mary gone. In this case, his sexual frustration, something that we also see with the suggestive character designs of not only the mannequins, but Maria, the bobblehead nurses, and the mandarins. Now, obviously, there's quite a leap between provocative representations of characters and monsters and sexual assault. So, to make sense of this, I'd say that the way to interpret it has everything to do with your personal take on James himself. We'll talk about this more in my video on the game's endings, which should drop sometime next week, but the circumstances surrounding his murder of Mary are intentionally ambiguous. The videotape does show a struggle, so it definitely wasn't planned, but in the Leave ending, it sure seems like Mary wanted to die, turning it into a mercy killing complicated by James's selfish feelings. But in the Maria ending, the way Mary talks about how James killed her gives the opposite impression, that she didn't want to die. So if you're of the mindset there was more along the lines of euthanasia and elevate the Leave ending, then you can view this as Pyramid Head's way of shaming James for being sexually frustrated while his wife was sick, punishing him by saying that he's a terrible person for having those feelings at all. On the other hand, if you do view it as a murder, and you're someone who prefers the Maria or In Water ending, then James is a much worse person. And perhaps he did think of doing heinous and terrible things like this. But at its core, whether it's just an attack or sexual assault, they're two common yet different interpretations of this scene, both of which still serve the same purpose. The next time we see Pyramid Head, it's for a boss fight. After finishing the clock puzzle and attempting to exit Blue Creek Apartments, James enters the arena just as Pyramid Head tosses aside the body of a dead monster, and then is forced to contend with the big guy himself. During the fight, Pyramid Head shows no real signs of vulnerability. He just takes whatever you throw at him and keeps on coming at you with his massive knife. After enough time has passed, or after you've dealt enough damage, it's not entirely clear which based on what I've seen, the Otherworld siren will go off, and Pyramid Head will throw open the double doors and leave to go do whatever he does when he isn't tailing James. Hilariously, if you try to attack Pyramid Head while he's on his way to the door, he'll respond by backhanding James with the great knife. It's definitely something I'm going to do for the lulz on my next playthrough, but if you're low on health, I wouldn't recommend it. Now, this boss fight brings up an interesting question. If Pyramid Head's purpose is to force James to face the truth, then why does he attack him here? Well, there are many acceptable interpretations, but I personally subscribe to the idea that he's testing James. It's a common theory that James is in a recurring loop, something that's hinted at by the Maria ending and the fact that many of the dead human bodies in the game, even those killed by Eddie, look quite a bit like our protagonist. So I like the idea that Pyramid Head is testing James to see if he has the strength and skill to get through the journey ahead, unlike the other fallen Jameses. At the same time, I think this personal take of mine dovetails quite nicely with the more traditional viewpoint, which is that another part of Pyramid Head's role is to punish James. As mentioned earlier, Mary's death was either a mercy killing complicated by James's selfish feelings, or the cold-blooded murder of a dying woman whose husband wanted her out of the way, or perhaps something in between. But regardless, in every one of those scenarios, James feels like he needs to be punished for his actions, and Pyramid Head is a manifestation of that desire. If you get too close to Pyramid Head, he'll certainly do some punishing. He hits like a truck. Just about any blow from his great knife will take James down to critical health. So make no mistake, while I do believe he is testing James, he's still punishing him at the same time, throwing all the torment he can his way to see if he can be the James if you subscribe to the recurring loop theory, to take all the punishment necessary to reach the end and face the dark reality awaiting him at Lakeview Hotel. The third time we see Pyramid Head, he's the subject of the game's best jump scare, as he grabs James by the throat on the roof of Brookhaven Hospital and chucks him down a hole. This allows James to reach areas in the hospital that were previously inaccessible to him, to reunite with Laura, and later on, Maria. So once again, he's pushing him forward, closer to the truth, and punishing him at the same time. I mean, damn, that's quite the fall. We see this once again at the end of Otherworld Hospital. As Maria and James are looking for the way out, Pyramid Head shows up and chases them to the elevator. James escapes, but Maria doesn't, and dies on the end of his spear. On the surface, the implication here is obvious. James killed Mary, and Maria is essentially an over-sexualized version of her. By killing her here, Pyramid Head is trying to force James to confront this repressed truth. At the same time, there is a deeper way to look at this scene. The common interpretation of Maria is that she's a manifestation created by the town of Silent Hill to keep James from accepting that truth, to distract him, and to choose a replacement wife over moving on from the death of his real one, and in doing so, indulge in those selfish reasons he had for wanting her to die. This is alluded to in the dialogue with Mary/Maria before the final boss fight, and the cyclical nature of the Maria ending. By killing Maria here, Pyramid Head is telling James, symbolically, that he'll need to cast the fantasy of Maria aside if he wants to move on with his life, as he does in the Leave ending. And on top of that, it's more punishment. Even if Maria is a facsimile of Mary, she still looks enough like her that to James, it no doubt feels like he just lost his wife all over again. From there, James goes quite a while without seeing Pyramid Head, in the flesh, at least. During his visit to the Silent Hill Historical Society, a pit stop on the way to Toluca Prison, he'll see this painting on the wall, which depicts the executioners of Silent Hill's past. This is why Pyramid Head looks the way he does. In all likelihood, James saw this painting during his trip to Silent Hill with Mary, and the image stuck with him. So when he returned to the town in search of the truth and in need of punishment, that desire took on this form. Our next several encounters with Pyramid Head take place during the Labyrinth level, and were all added to the game as part of the remake. First, he'll attack James in the ruined area, where you'll need to get him close enough to this mass of limbs that they begin to retreat, as if they're afraid of the big guy. And honestly, who can blame them? I'd want nothing to do with him either. In the desolate area, James will find Pyramid Head patrolling a circular hallway. To progress here, the player needs to enter a space that one of the trophies describes as Pyramid Head's room, break down a wall, and slip through the newly created opening. Considering that James still has some serious shit to go through, including an old school Force Stealth style segment, I chalked this up to yet another test for James. Can he get through what lies ahead, especially those pesky mandarins in the basement of Lakeview Hotel? Furthermore, both of these encounters continue the theme of punishment. Both times he appears, it's completely by surprise, and evading him without taking a great knife to the face is really difficult. So even as he tests James, even as he pushes him towards the truth, he's making sure he gets the punishment that James so desperately believes he deserves. After you've completed the labyrinth and Maria dies, you'll get a hold of Pyramid Head's great knife, which you'll need to use to clear out this mass of limbs. It's one of those quiet, symbolic moments that Silent Hill 2's remake does so well, and helps cement Pyramid Head's purpose as the force that drives James closer to the truth. At the same time, I think you could also take the fact that James gets to wield it in the first place as a reference to the fan theory that underneath the helmet, Pyramid Head looks like James. It's an interpretation that Ito agrees with to some extent, though he makes sure to say that he didn't design the big guy with the face in mind. This type of thing, broadly speaking, is something that I think the remake did very well. Whether it's the camera shot from the backseat of the car in the in-water ending, or the aforementioned appearance of the human bodies, Bloober Team did a lot of things that deepen fan theories without straight up confirming them either. That shows some serious love for the original material and dedication to their audience if you ask me, and is something that developers of any future remakes should take note of when they begin their work. Finally, in our last encounter with Pyramid Head, there's not just one big guy. Now, there's two of them. James encounters this terrifying duo at the end of the Otherworld version of Lakeview Hotel, where they have Maria suspended upside down in a contraption that calls to mind both the execution cages of Silent Hill's past and the bed-like contraption that surrounds the flesh lips and the game's final boss. The two Pyramid Heads do what they do, and kill Maria. A final act of punishment, one more look at the woman who so closely resembles his wife murdered in brutal fashion. James then falls to his knees, and thus begins one of the most powerful moments of the game. After screaming in anguish, he admits that he now understands Pyramid Head and his purpose. He acknowledges that Pyramid Head is a manifestation of his desire to be punished for killing Mary, and that for a time he did need him. He wanted to be tormented, to be treated like the inmates of Toluca Prison once were at the hands of the town's executioners. But now that's all over. He's seen the videotape, he knows what he did, and he's at last ready to confront that truth. And I think the double boss fight that follows is yet another test. Sure, James says he's ready to confront the truth, but the Pyramid Heads want him to prove it. And once they've taken enough damage, and James makes it clear that he's prepared to face the final boss, they drive their spears into the ground and impale themselves on the other end. Because they've served their purpose, and ultimately, James was right. He doesn't need them anymore. So overall, what we see from Pyramid Head is a role that is truly unique in video games. Yes, he is a boss, and he confronts James at multiple points, but it's all in the service of testing him and delivering the punishment he believes he deserves. And when he's not swinging his great knife at him, he's trying to push him towards the truth. The dark, complex, and gripping truth that rests at the heart of this very human story. A story that earned the original game all kinds of accolades, and now, 30 years later, will likely do the same for the remake at the behest of a modern audience. Pyramid Head is the driver of that story, as James, at times, sits in the back seat, as helpless as he is during that scene in room 201. And that's what makes Pyramid Head so important to Silent Hill 2. Thanks for watching. Massive thanks to Mathias T. Solice, and David Peppiatt for allowing me to use their covers from the Silent Hill soundtrack for this video. To check out all of their music, just follow the links to their channel pages down below. Big shout out to all my silver and gold tier YouTube channel members and Patreon subscribers, including James Pruitt, Corey Matson, Gustavo Balabi, Lil Caesar, Reed, Pathonian, Faith G, and Anna Novikova, who get early access to these videos thanks to donations of $5 to $10 a month. See you guys next time!